Tonight on Nova Legends podcast, I have the historic 1971 TC Williams Titans featured, made world famous, and Remember the Titans. Guys, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us. Nice to be here.
Yeah. Well, to give a little introduction of these guys, and obviously TC Williams today is called Alexandria City Titans. In the 50s in Alexandria, Virginia, there were three high schools. There was Parker Gray, which was the all-black school. There was GW, with the great Skeeter Swift played basketball. And there was Hammond. In the early 60s, they began to integrate schools. And I believe Parker Gray closed around 64 and 65. So all three schools began to integrate, even though GW tended to have more black students. So they were all integrated since 1965 or 66, whatever year TC opened. In 1971, TC Williams became the school for juniors and seniors, and Francis Hammond and GW were, I guess, middle schools and also 9th and 10th. So TC Williams and Herman Boone, who had been an assistant coach at TC Williams and then wrestling coach, was promoted to the head coach. With the three schools combined, I think Hammond had been in the regionals. You created a juggernaut of great players and obviously a great team. The team went undefeated. It was second in the nation. I like to see the team that was number one. Richard M. Nixon said that this team saved the city of Alexandria, which is interesting. In 2000, Jerry Bruckheimer, the famous director, he brought us the movie, Remember the Titans. It was interesting to me because Herman Boone used to keep the score when I used to referee basketball games. I didn't know he was famous. I guess he wasn't. And, you know, it told a slightly different story. It said it was basically Hammond and George Washington had combined, and George Washington was the black school and Hammond was the white school, and formed TC Williams. That wasn't necessarily true. Obviously, Coach Boone did come from North Carolina, but he had been there a year. He wasn't chosen over Yost without being here. Obviously, the team came together, maybe a little bit less dramatic that was in the movie, but Hollywood does what Hollywood does, right? The games weren't as dramatic as the movie probably made it seem like. I think they probably had one close game all year. I think most of the games were unscored upon. The close game was against Marshall, what was in the middle of the year. Obviously, Marshall, coached by Ed Henry, who my neighbor, he was a coach at Robinson when I was there. I played on the JV team. Coach Yost was at Robinson by the time I got there as well. But so that was a little bit off as well. And Gary Bertier, who featured prominently in the movie, unfortunately was paralyzed in a car accident and obviously killed in a car accident as well by a drunk driver. He actually played in the state championship game. He didn't get hurt before that game. So the movie told a different story, but one way or another, it was a tremendous movie and a great team on movie and also on screen. So I'd like to introduce the Titans that are here tonight. And I'm very thankful for you guys doing it. First, we have Bob Luckett, who called this meeting. Bob has been, I saw a lot of your interviews online, and you've been prominent in keeping this incredible story alive, and not just the movie, but the real story. Bob played center at TC. He was a TC Williams guy. So before the schools combined, he was already at TC, ended up playing at Bridgewater. Bob, nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Julian.
Oh, of course. And then we have Jim Brown. Jim Brown was another center, but he went to Hammond. He was a senior in the year the movie featured, 1971. He didn't play college football, but he did play in the orchestra. Maybe he would have been in the movie, maybe, but he wasn't contacted by the proper people. But Jim, nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
A pleasure being here, Julian.
Oh, sure. Thank you. And also we have Warren Robinson. Warren was another TC Williams guy for his 4 years, and he played wide receiver. He was a senior in 1971 as well. Warren, thanks for doing this. Nice to meet you.
Same here.
Yeah. And then we got Ronny Bass. Ronny Bass featured prominently in the movie. They also called him Sunshine. It's funny. You can't look any better in a movie than Ronnie Bass did in the movie. The women loved him. He was great looking. He was very liberal and tolerant to other people. You must have just loved this movie when it came out. There's one little part that people probably ask you a lot about, though. But Ronnie was a quarterback. He was a quarterback. Ended up having a career at USC, a four-year player there, and I believe at least a two-year starter there. And Ronnie was a junior in 1971. Nice to meet you, Ronnie.
Thank you, Julian. Nice to be here.
Oh, sure. Thanks. Also, we got Fred Alderson. Did I say it right, Fred Alderson?
That's it.
Okay. Fred was another TC guy. He didn't have to transfer in 1971. He was offensive tackle. He was a junior in the year of the movie, 1971. Fred, nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Now I got Derick. We got Derick Hopson. Derick, yet another TC Williams guy. He played quarterback, and he was a senior in 1971. Derick, nice to meet you.
Same here, Brother Brown.
Oh, sure. And then we have Kirk Barker. Kurt, like Jim, was a Hammond guy. Played on the offensive line with Jim. He was a senior in 1971. Also played a little bit at the Naval Academy. Kirk, nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me, Julian.
Sure. Well, let's start with the name T.C. Williams. T.C. Williams was an iconic name when I went to Robinson because it was really the only school with black athletes in the area. Wakefield did, but they weren't in our district. I went to Robinson. It was a northern district. TC was an iconic team. Most of the schools in the western part of the county didn't have a lot of black students yet, and they were just so dominant in sports. So the name TC Williams Titans was iconic. But then when the movie came out, it went to a whole nother level. But like many of our schools in Northern Virginia and throughout the country, due to politics, and we don't have to get into the politics of the situation, but they changed the name to Alexandria City Titans. At least they kept the AC Titans. They tried to keep the poetry there. And it's funny. One of the rivals, bitter rivals, when I was in school was Woodson, and Woodson's name has changed as well to Carter G. Woodson from W.T. Woodson. But just let's start there. What does that name change do to you guys? Was it disappointing? Does it take away from the iconic nature of T.C. Williams? Remember the Titans? Anybody want to start with that?
Sure, I would.
Okay, sure.
I tell most folks my diploma would always say T.C. Williams. Mm-hmm. I will always be a T.C. Williams Titan, and I understand the changing of the name and who T.C. was, but realistically, it is what it is. And I'm a proud person of wearing paraphernalia for T.C. Williams Titan. Everywhere I go, folks want to know, and I'm gonna let them know. T.C. Williams Titan. I'm not even gonna say / Alexander City School. They got to figure that out. 2024. Check out check out Siri. She'll tell you whatever you want to know. So yeah, for me, and being in Richmond, Virginia, because I was here when we moved the Confederate statues. And for those that had just come here, that was a major thing, man. But for black folks in this city, it was just what it was. It was historical. It didn't bother us. All them guys were dead.
Yeah. The name meant something else by the time you guys played, I guess. Is that what you're saying, Derick?
Basically,
yeah.
It is. They kept Titan. Mm-hmm. Like I said, T.C. Williams was just a name. Yeah. And it is on my diploma. They're not going to change the movie. Mm-hmm. The movie going to always be T.C. Williams Titans.
Yeah. Much nicer building, too.
Change to Alexander City School Titans. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in here?
Julian, I'll say this. I think all the players that transferred from the other schools, whether it be Jim or Kirk or Ron, who was going to be in his first year, maybe a little bit less for him. But the guys that came from GW and Hammond, they will always be admirals and they will always be Prexies. That's where they grew up. That's where they learned the game. And their schools are still very important to them. However, they have the luxury of also being Titans. And they may not consider it a luxury, but they have the dual honor of being able to represent two of the high schools that were in the city. And look, the schools in the city were bitter rivals by competition. And I'll say this, it was more about the color of your uniform than the color of your skin.
Yeah. Well said.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in here?
I was going to say earlier, I think one of the things that you find in situations like this is that people have a lot of identity with various things. And for the TC Williams folks that came up through TC, that's a strong identity, particularly for the folks who lived in that area all their life. I was a new student at Hammond in ninth grade, new to the entire area. And so I had, while I was at Hammond and I identified as a Hammond, Hammond Admiral, when I moved to TC, it was just another school for me. I'd already been to like 12 different schools growing up. So for me, I didn't have the identity fix, for myself. But I did appreciate that the name change means a lot to a lot of people.
Yep. Thanks, Jim. Anyone else want to jump in here? All right, you want to move? Anyone else? Okay. Well, let's talk about the tension that was in the city. Now, if you watch the movie, you would have thought this is Little Rock in 1957, 58, the first day of school, and it was almost like you guys, didn't know anybody from the other race. Now, I was 5 years old that time and living, 10 miles west. Obviously Hollywood's got to exaggerate. They got to make a movie that's interesting. But did the movie capture the tensions at all, or was everything overblown, or did some of the tensions that they captured, did it ring true in real life?
I think there was a lot of tension when they announced it, right? Because they didn't announce it till what, May?
Correct.
Yeah, it was late in the year. Yeah.
Yeah. And, everybody had already selected student body presidents and yearbook editors. And I think parents were more upset for the class of 72 because here's their senior year. They're going to be going into this, unknown situation, right? I mean, you knew who your teachers were going to be if you were at Hammond, GW, or TC, but now it's like, okay, who's going to be the algebra teachers? Who's going to be, or run student government? And I think from what I remember from those first couple meetings with the parents that they had, that's where most of the questions really came. Now, how's it going to impact my child's ability to get into college?
Yeah.
Not much different than it would be today.
I don't remember any sign waving, screaming, shouting matches. But I do remember some tense school board meetings. I did attend a couple of the meetings, and there were some tensions. You could visibly feel tensions in the audience. But it wasn't. It was overblown in the movie, at least in my opinion.
Well, that's one thing about humans and living. There will be change. Yeah. And that's what, no matter what school or what area in Alexandria you lived, you had to accept change. Yeah. And of course, one of the positive things about winning like we were, it helped with adapting to these changes.
Yeah. So Nixon was telling the truth. It did make a difference in the city?
Yes, of course it did. Of course it did. It helped with people getting along and accepting. And at the beginning of the season, people had their little groups of Hammond, GW, TC. By the end of the season, everybody was mingling and everybody was happy.
There you go.
Yeah. Ronny, what was your point of view coming in from California? It was in the movie, you were pretty breezy about it. Well, come on, guys, let's play some football. But what about in real life? How'd you feel?
Well, as you know, I came in probably 2 or 3 weeks before camp. So everything, the scuttles that are talking about had already been settled. School board meetings, whatever the parents were upset about. and the kids, everything was settled. So when I got there, it was, almost time to start playing, which was good. So I don't remember, a lot of tension really. Maybe the first meeting as a team meeting, because there was still 3 different cliques going on there, and then me, an outsider. So I didn't have deep friends yet at that point. I just got there, and as the movie portrayed, I got there, and Coach Boone took me down to the Berg to work out. And I think some of y'all were down there for that. So I think Coach Boone was testing me, honestly. But
yeah, I lived there, so I know.
Yeah. So that worked out. Those were the first teammates I met, and that certainly helped as we got into, the practice and everything.
But even if there wasn't tension, did people have friends from other races, or even without the tension, did you have close friends? Or like in the movie, there was it Petey? Oh, not Petey, but it was Julius and Gary became good friends. But were there friends like that before the season?
Yeah, well, people have to remember it was 3 high schools. Luckett and I were good friends because of sports. Bertier and I weren't good friends because of location. I tell people, Bobby Luckett and them knew the white kids at Hammond. The black kids at TC knew all the black kids at GW. So when the 3 schools came together, it was Luckett and them who kind of like merged that bridge, because we were teammates and schoolmates for 4 years at TC. Where with Kirk and them, we were just rivals, bitter rivals. Hammond was not my friend. So for me, it was tension, because coming from where I was from my seat, the city was still not quite into the fact that we were integrated and being bused. Trying to figure out how to balance that race thing out. So that's where the busing piece came in. But the bridge came from the white kids that knew the white kids at Hammond, and the black kids at TC knowing the black kids at GW. So it was kind of easy to bridge that. And as young folks, we didn't care what color you was. We wanted to know if we were going to play.
Yeah.
And that was going to be my point, sure.
Right.
Good point.
Was.
The tension was more on your position and starting than it was on what color you were.
Yeah.
Or the uniform. We had enough tension right within our own, because you had 3 starters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only one can start.
Julius, Julian, when we went to camp, I think that's where we got together as a group of guys, if you will, because we got away from the noise in the city, and we were just 15, 16, 17-year-old guys. I mean, I used to sneak out of the dorm after 10:30 at night with Kirk Barker and Gary Bertier and Louis Laster. And just weeks before.
I'm shocked to hear that.
You're shocked to hear that.
What a quartet that was.
Weeks before that, we were rivals and enemies.
Yeah.
But we had in common.
Kirk and I go back to what, like 8th, 9th grade, because we rode together.
Rode crew together.
All 3 high schools shared the same boathouse. And we rode for Old Dominion Boat Club in the summer. And, D was the coach at Hammond, but he was our coach in the summer. And so a bunch of us who rode crew. And I remember one year from track as well. There's a lot of downtime during a track, right? And so, we were going against Hammond or GW. And as I recall, youth league baseball, we used to all play against each other. So, it wasn't like we were all strangers.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, what about the characters, in the movie? Did the movie get the characters right in general? I mean, the characters that featured prominently: Julius Campbell, defensive end; Petey Jones, who was a running back, moved to defense; Big Blue, the guy who liked to sing a lot; Jerry Harris, who was the quarterback who got hurt before Ronny Bass took his spot; Louis Lastic, who was a lot of fun, another transfer; Gary Bertier, of course, the linebacker; Jerry Buck, Allen, I didn't get his last name, but he was the guy that rotated in the secondary with Petey, and then there was Coach Tyrell
Well,
as
both
well.
of those characters were made up.
What's that?
Alan Bosley and Coach Terrell were made up characters.
Okay, they're a made up character. Okay,
Yes.
but the other characters?
There's another made up character, the character Ray, who was supposed to be on the offensive line.
Right.
And he was called out for missing a block in the movie. And I can tell you, I was on that offensive line, and nobody missed a block.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Nobody missed a block on.
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, right?
No, yeah, it's a story.
Movie, right? They gotta invent stuff to make it. So.
Yeah. But what about the characters? Like the Big Blue really sing? Was Louis a character? Was Jerry really a minister? I guess. What was Petey? Kind of I don't want to say a clown, but a lot of fun. Did they get the nature of the characters right?
Well, Jerry was wrong.
Yeah.
Jerry was not Reverend Jerry Harris. That was something that Hollywood gave him.
Yeah. Jerry was a white Navy brat.
Yeah.
My best friend in high school. So he and Kirk and Dan, they all went to the Naval Academy.
Oh, so Jerry was white.
Yeah.
Oh.
Jerry Harris?
No, you're talking about Jerry Buck.
Oh,
You're talking about Jerry Buck.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Jerry Buck. Yeah.
Not Jerry Harris, Jerry Buck.
Right, Jerry
Oh,
Buck.
okay.
Got it. Did Big Blue sing in the locker room?
There was singing in the locker room.
In the locker room, he sang on the sidelines, and he thought he was a movie star.
Okay, so he was portrayed correctly, or at least reasonably so.
He sang with Avery Morton and Dana Grimes all the time.
Yeah, Ronnie, how'd you feel about how you were portrayed? Did you enjoy how Hollywood portrayed you?
Parts of it, yeah. I mean, I was a girl magnet, so they got that right. But there was no kissing in the locker room or things like that. They could have left that out for sure. Yeah. And I appreciate Coach Boone. He told me one time he objected to that scene, but they didn't cut it out. They said it was too late to cut it out. So it is what it is. But for the most part, yeah, I did move in from California, and things were a little different out there, as you know. They still are. But I thought they did okay. I mean, the fact that he was left-handed didn't bother me. Yeah. But, he played – I met him. He played quarterback in high school, so at least he looked like he knew what he was doing.
I
mean,
did you really start ball? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, did you really come in because Jerry got hurt and you came in the middle of the game, one game?
I don't think exactly that way. I don't remember it happening that way. But like I said, that first year was pretty much a blur for me because we just got there and we got thrown right into the season and practice, and goal number one was making the team. But that first year went very fast for me.
Yeah. Great.
Julian, I would interject something.
Sure.
And that would be that when they portrayed the Bertier and the JC friendship, essentially left side, strong side was Louis Lastic, who played the left defensive tackle in that offense, and JC played left defensive end, and I played left outside linebacker. And that was the left side, strong side. And it was pretty formidable. We had a really good defense, but we shut down a lot of teams. And that was one portion of the movie that got twisted because Lastic was a defensive player, and I played left outside linebacker instead of Bertier because I kind of like to think Julius was a junior, but I kind of like to feel like I was right behind him, and we had a pretty tight relationship on how we played football and how we played that side of the ball.
Well, I didn't think you were the outside linebacker, Kirk. I thought you were inside because I remember you coming through like in practice between Jerry and I, between guard center.
When we would do a 6-5.
Okay.
But when we'd play 6-5, I would come inside. I was kind of a Swiss Army knife. I mean, I held extra points, a linebacker holding extra points, right? You know, and I played fullback on the bull set when we'd go into that offensive set. But I played left outside. The left inside was either Jimmy Jones, or it ended up being Rufus holding that spot down. And Bertier played right inside, because I remember he was always pushing himself off. Nichols got pissed. He was always using Nichols as a plug, pushing him or whatever, and that became a problem. But
they almost fought a bunch of times because Bertier would push Nichols the way he wanted him to go, so he would take on the blocker and free Bertier up to have a lane.
And Julian, in the surprise how they remember
Bertier
all
wanted
this
to freewheel, be freed up. Bertier wanted to freewheel and be freed up, and he was pushing Nichols around to try to, like you said, to try to take up blockers.
And the other outside linebacker was Ricky Williams until he quit, and then Petey went in there, right?
Well, Chris Koosling started out.
Petey Koosling.
Koos started, and then had a couple decent games, and then there were some issues, and I'm not sure if that's who the Allen was in the movie, that they were pushing guys in and out, but then they started shuffling guys in. They shuffled in. I think that's when they shuffled in Petey, but Jimmy Jones played left inside a couple times, and Ricky Williams did a couple times. But I think because they didn't get as much playing time, that's when Ricky Williams said he was going to hold out for basketball.
But in the Julian, Kirk brings up a good point. Yeah. There was more competition between the offense and the defense than anything else.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like, the offense. We like once a week, I think we practice against first team defense, right? And so they'd be out for us, and we'd be out for them. And it was in the locker rooms. It was offense, defense. On the buses, right? Offense, defense.
Yeah.
And one final point, Julian,
sure.
On that I'll close on this one. When you were talking about tension, there was tension even after camp, not on the teams, but in the schools. And I think they essentially used the football team. We would wear our jerseys to school on Fridays to kind of maintain a presence. And then if you remember, because of that tension, we never played a home night game. So I used to always look forward to playing away games because a majority of them we got to play at night, and it was kind of fun playing under the lights.
When I was playing at Robinson in '84, they were still playing TC Williams home games on Saturdays. That was
didn't have. They play night games if we don't have lights.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't the real reason because of the community? They didn't want the lights. Sugar Baby, Bobby, what the people that lived behind it?
The people that lived in was a section. It was a black section of town. It was called Mudtown, and they, when the city went to them to build TC Williams, they put up. If you remember, there were big concrete walls all the way down the backside of the field. And that was to kind of keep the noise down from going there. And in '69, they outlawed night games in the city because there was a big riot at a football game. I think it might have been a Ham and GW game. I was at the game, and they started throwing rocks and chasing kids down the street over to the burger chef that used to be across the street. And City Council enacted that there would be no further night games. They almost did that for basketball as well, but the City Council refrained from doing that. And then I think in about 2006 or 7, they rented portable lights to come into the city, and they did it as a fundraiser. And during that time, they went and worked with the people that lived in that community and got them to acquiesce so they could put lights up.
Because Kirk, didn't have lights, did y'all?
We did. Ham and headlights.
Y'all had lights?
You did.
Well, could they have had a movie based on fact that would have been interesting? Was there a real story there without exaggerating things, or do you think that's you guys won so convincingly, or such a dominant team, and there wasn't that tension that they actually needed to do some things to make it more interesting?
Well, those movies based on facts are called documentaries. Entertainment. It wasn't a documentary. It was entertainment.
Right.
Good entertainment, but still.
It just happened to turn out to be a tool for teaching and coaching. I don't know if it was meant to be initially.
I think one of the biggest injustices in the movie was that it had us playing Marshall the last game of the year.
Yeah.
When in fact we played Andrew Lewis, and I think that Disney missed the mark, because if they wanted to show how much we came together as two races or three rivals and how powerful we became and how great of a team we came, they should have shown us playing the actual team that we played. And they ended up having minus 5 yards total offense in that game. Something else that was not done was we had two games during the season where the defense also gave up minus yards to Herndon and to Madison. They gave up minus 15 to Herndon and minus 55 yards rushing to Madison. I mean, they didn't show the power of the ball club. And I think the power of the ball club transcended from three groups of kids from three different high schools coming together as one.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of focus on the emotion.
There.
Yeah.
So what was the positive of the movie? We talked about the negative. What was the positive?
Yeah.
There were positives. There's a lot of positiveness in the movie that, again, we can sit and we can beat it up because we know the true story. We know everything that the movie portrayed was a lie or a story. But then I came to realize that it is what it is because that's Hollywood, and it was about the money. So the story that they sold, like you said about the state final, that was boring. Who would want to hear about a state final where you beat somebody up 27-0? They had a minus 5 yards. Agree, it didn't show the power of the football, but it showed the power of the team coming together as one. And the city, that team helped the city to heal racially.
Yeah, I mean,
the first couple ball games that we played, when you looked in the stands, they were still separate. By the time we played our fifth game and realized the city realized what we were, after we realized what we had, then they got behind us as a city and not just as some people of a different race.
Yeah.
So by the end of the season, the city was one.
Yeah.
The city was just one big happy place to be, part of T.C. Williams Titans. And for me, that was the positiveness in the movie. And that's what I try to tell folks, of what it brought this city that was still racially divided. We weren't diverse. It was just white folks and black folks.
All right.
So the movie,
that's a great point. The message of the movie is the most important.
Yeah.
And it was the city's first state championship. It was Alexandria's first state football championship, which was a really nice feather to attach to that football team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Herman Boone and Coach Yost. How were they portrayed? What was the relationship? It's a little odd in the movie because the movie begins when Coach Boone is picked for the job over Coach Yost, who's had an incredible career and I guess is headed for a Hall of Fame. But what was the reality between Boone and Yost?
I think everybody was surprised when Herman got selected as the head coach.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure anybody really expected that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Julie and I played for, this is Kirk, I played for Coach Yost since eighth grade, since freshman football. And one guy who kind of got overlooked is Glenn Furman.
Yes.
They were kind of a good cop, bad cop team. And as far as when we first heard about the news, we did all get together and I had actually looked at going to St. Stephen's, one of the private schools down the road there, to finish my last year, and some other guys. We'd looked at options, and quite frankly, Coach Yost is a guy who, we got together and he said, "Hey, let's finish this thing out." And if he was able to suck it up, then we did. And what doesn't get portrayed is the next year when those guys had they had all underclass. We had a lot of underclass talent with Ronny and Fred and Brad Smith and Earl Cook and Monk Davis and Wool and JC. They had so much talent coming back, but two things that they didn't have was Coach Yost and Coach Furman. I mean, they left that defense. They left as defensive coaches and coordinators, and I don't think the defensive side of the ball was as strong, and they had plenty of firepower and plenty of great athletes.
Where did Yost go after TC?
I don't know if they sat out a year or actually went back to Hammond and coached the middle school, the JV teams. I do know that Glenn Furman went on, and that guy was a great coach. Glenn Furman went on later and actually was the guy who brought back some notoriety and some established championship programs at TC Williams.
Yeah, he was a freshman. He was a Hammond freshman coach when I was in high school. I played. They killed us, and then he became the varsity coach while I was in high school. And he was a coach when they were second in the nation.
He was a very good defensive mind, a very good motivator. It was really he and Yost were such a perfect complement. It was good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. So
I can say that I don't think the movie did enough justice to the energy that Herman Boone demonstrated during the year. I found him to be always moving, always active, always up and down the line, talking to people, making sure, sometimes yelling at people and scruffing you up a little, just to make sure that you understood that he demanded excellence, and he was always moving as he went around to things. I think the energy level was a little low in the movie. It was good for Denzel Washington, but I think Herman Boone would have definitely said I moved around a lot more.
He didn't have Denzel's. He had more intensity than Denzel had, because Denzel seemed to play the role.
Samuel Jackson.
What was that, Fred?
Samuel Jackson would have been better. Would have been better. It's that kind of energy. You bring up a good point.
Yeah, that's right.
Fred, I had heard that they went to Samuel L. Jackson first, and he said no. I've heard that before.
Yeah. Did they have the good cop, bad cop thing going when Coach Boone would be real tough on a player and Coach Yost would go clean it up a little bit? Did that happen in real life?
Yeah, Doc Hines was these guys will explain, he was a knucklehead that really interjected some humor into the side. He was a big personality.
Yeah, Doc Hines, definitely.
Coach Hines was the most beloved coach of all of our coaches. And it doesn't make any difference whether you played offense, defense, or special teams. When you talk about coaches, Coach Doc Hines comes up all the time. Period.
He got the most respect from everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody liked him. You could talk.
And Julian, it would be tough, and with the exception of Barker, because he's such a flamboyant speaker about the defense. I didn't want anybody else from the defense in this group because he talks for 12 people. But I think that all these guys that play offense that are here would tell you this, that it would be tough for us to really see how much interaction or play against each other that Boone and Yost had, because they kept us so separated.
Yeah.
The only time that those coaches were seen as a group is when we came together as a group. And most of those times, Boone was talking or throwing out some of his bizarre ideas or his words of wisdom. And we were just there to listen, as well as the other 4 or 5 coaches. They didn't talk. Now, you asked about real life. I can tell you stories that guys have told me. Colin Arrington, God rest his soul, Patches. After he fumbled at camp one day, Boone told him to start running. And he said, Luckett, I didn't know anything but to do to run. We used to have a hill at TC. And he said, go run to the hill, is what he told him in Gettysburg. And he said, Luckett, I just started running and I didn't realize that the hill was a mountain and it was about 10 miles away. And he said, I don't know how far I ran, but finally I made the decision that I wasn't running anymore. So I went back to camp and we went to dinner. And when we went to dinner, Coach Yost came and pulled me out of dinner and said, Patches was his nickname. He said, can I speak to you for a minute? Took him out in the hall. And he said, look, son, you just keep doing what you're doing. You're going to be all right. Don't you let coach get you down. Now, that's the first story. The second story is Dana Grimes. Dana Grimes and Avery Morton were our return specialists. We were made up of specialists because of the numbers that we had. And the coaches were looking for ways to get guys that played at the other schools into the game. They were return specialists. Dana fumbled a punt in a game. And when he came off the field, Boone yanked him over and hit him in the head with his clipboard, which he always would do to all of us, and said, that's not good enough. We can't have that.
Wow.
And Dana was devastated. And he said, I went and sat down on the bench and was by myself and just didn't know what to do. This is during a game. I think it was Hayfield. And he said, Coach Yost came over to me and sat down next to me. And he said, Dana, don't you worry about that. That happens to everybody. You're going to be fine, son. You're good. You just keep doing what you're doing. And he said, Luckett, I never fumbled again the rest of that year. And I never fumbled again my senior year. And I've never forgotten that Coach Yost sat down and took me aside and gave me those kind words. So did it happen? Yes. Were we acutely aware of that? I don't think we were.
Yeah. But and again, to Boone's defense, he was put in a tough position. You know, it really was kind of a no-win situation because he was given the keys to a Ferrari. You know, he was given 3 freaking football teams. He's given a football team that was going to be a 3A, which was the largest at the time, that was going to be 4 deep in all these positions. And what do you expect? You know, I mean, you know, is this guy can't get it out of second gear? So we don't really know. You don't always know what his internal pressure was. I'm not making an excuse for him because we always, you know, Herman was what he was, but he got the job done. And, you know, as a high school football coach, it was a lot different in 50 years ago than it is high school football coaches now. They got a lot more liberty. I mean, they're grabbing face masks and whatever they needed to do. So, Herman, hey,
it's not like Coach Boone didn't come with some
offense got the job done. So, you know, you give him credit for getting the job done.
He had credentials too. Now it's not like he came in there without any. He had won state championships there in Carolina. So it's not like
he won 6 state championships in North Carolina and came here with 90.
So it's not like he was just some Rudy Poo coach coming in. Yeah.
He was just in a position
man's proud.
He just could either win or lose. He had a situation where, again, because again, we were just high school kids wanting to play football. But you had parents pointing the finger, who's going to be the coach? Why isn't he the coach? And if the stories are true, what pressure does he have? We don't know, because for me, I felt the coaches kept their problems, like you said, to themselves or to the coach's office. They didn't show that on the field. And they kept it separate, offense and defense, and the special teams. So, I mean, let's give all the coaches their due. It just so happened that he got to flip the coin. And he had some assistant coaches that were head coaches at the previous schools. It was just, for me, a blast to see that all come together and created what they created, which was a Ferrari.
Was Yost's daughter really prominent like she was in the movie? Did you guys know? Was she on the sidelines yelling
Kirk, you can
At
answer that.
Hammond practices a lot. She was at Hammond practices when she was younger. I don't remember seeing her that much at the TC stuff.
Okay, that's real. Well, I knew Ed Henry really well because I lived 4 doors down. I was his paper boy in high school. I played JV when he was the varsity coach. He ended up going to UVA as an assistant, but they portrayed him to a T. I mean, they nailed it. The guy looked like him. His mannerisms were like him. After he lost the game, oh, good game, guys. He was just like he was in real life. Did you guys know the legend of Ed Henry? Was he like this mythical figure like he's portrayed in the movie at that time?
He was known to always have a good squad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew that, but
Not like Bob Hartage at Annandale and the legacy that the Annandale Adams had in Northern Virginia at that time.
Guys, what else was going on in the world in 1971? Like in the movie, they don't talk much about Vietnam, but it had to be on your guys' minds as maybe get drafted. George Allen had just come to DC. He was getting his over the hill game together. And the thing that's interesting about that was DC really wasn't a football town, before 1970, at least on the professional level. And it was going to become a huge Redskin town over the next 20, 30 years until Daniel Snyder bought him. But what else is going on in the world outside of football?
Huge. If you want to listen to Ball of Confusion by the Temptations, you get a pretty good idea of what's going on. These were interesting times. We had the Washington Post. We had a lot of racial issues with John Carlos and Tom. If you remember the '68 Mexico Olympics.
Yeah.
If you can remember, the Watts riots in Harlem. We had all that going on.
Yeah,
You had Nixon and the impeachment hearings. You truly had investigative journalism, and we had the Washington Post that was a true investigative. So we got to see a lot of really the key news, and we were at the Heartbeat in Alexandria, a bedroom community. So everything that was going on, that collage of world events, boy, we were privy to the center of the investigation and all that with the Washington Post.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else want to talk about what was going on in the world?
Well, I know.
I remember. You're absolutely right about the Redskins. The Redskins had just basically sucked until they brought Vince Lombardi in, right, to be the coach. A lot of people forget that Lombardi actually coached the Redskins, and then I'm not even sure they got to the first game before he was diagnosed with cancer, and then because I remember Sonny Jurgensen actually showed up to camp in shape. I remember that was one of his big motivators for losing weight, was the fact that he was going to have Vince Lombardi as his coach.
Yeah.
Fred, do you remember your senior year that the Redskins put on some kind of coaching clinic, I think at RFK or wherever they were playing? Because I think Tom Lewis and Doug Williams and a couple guys actually went to that. I've got a newspaper article from the Post that shows pictures. Do you remember anything about that?
No. Was it after the season, or when was it?
I think it was before the next season.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I was rowing all summer, so I wasn't around a whole lot.
Okay.
One event I do remember was that they had some sort of ceremony at one of the Redskins games where they were handing out, I think, trophies for some of the high school kids. So some of us got invited to go to the game, the Redskins game, sit on the sidelines. And, after I think it was halftime, they did some sort of, discussion or something like that, and gave out trophies.
Yeah.
That was my one moment in in the stadium there.
I don't know that this necessarily covers what the point that you're asking about what was going on, but I will say this, that here we are 53 years after we played and almost 25 years after the movie. and it still gets referenced a great deal. I was watching the Eagles and the Giants play NFL game, and Mark Sanchez was the color commentator, and he made reference to, that reminds him of Remember the Titans and Herman Boone, and Boone had an expression that's just like Novocaine. You just need to wait, and then it comes. And he's talking about Herman Boone and Denzel Washington in that movie on a color broadcast in 2024.
About that.
It's incredible. I mean, it's the only movie every single member of my family's watched, and that's hard to do because we all have such different tastes. I got 3 kids, and they all love that movie. It's something about that movie that's magic.
It has a strong point.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, guys.
Negative.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry, Derick. Well, what did winning a state championship mean to you? Now, before the movie, you guys had no idea there was going to be a movie. My sister won 2 state championships as point guard at Robinson. They never had a movie for Robinson, but that state championship stayed with her for a long time. They still think about that state championship, and I do too. Was watching her play. But what did it mean to you to be state champions? Did it have a lasting impact?
For me, it does. For me, it does. On any level, when you win a title, I don't care if it's little leagues or the pros. It's just something that lasts forever and forever. It's just individual success story, I guess. You're a winner. You're a winner. You think, for me, it's a positive piece. I'm a winner. I'm not losing. Yeah. And I don't care what it is. I don't care who I come up against. Winning a state title. How many can say that? Then to have won that a movie was made after you. How many can say that? Yeah. On any level.
Yeah. You guys and Hoosiers. Yeah.
Julian, I'll say I played on a lot of different teams in different sports since I was a little boy through Division I. And that football team, that particular team, the only team that I've played on that everybody in their position at that level, at that talent level, everybody was good. I mean, you didn't have to worry about, some teams, who the weak link is when you're a little kid and you hide him in right field, or you put the slow fat kid on first base, all that stuff comes through. But that was a football team that really everybody in their position was good. And I remember actually thinking, not wanting to get hurt. Practices were harder than games, not wanting to get hurt because there was a chance you might not get another shot at getting back to a starting goal. So that was one thing about the level of talent with the kids at that year. And I actually thought that was going to be a continuation of a dynasty because when you put that many kids in Alexandria together, you've got a chance to just continue to reload.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. One thing I can say, Julian, is that because we won that championship, what it meant to me is that I took away from it that you can be a winner in your life, and you can be a winner if you demand excellence out of yourself. That's one thing that Coach Boone stressed over and over. He demanded excellence. And I think it served me well over the years. If I demand excellence for myself, then I'll be successful.
Yeah, the fourth quarter drills that we used to do. The Coach Jones, God damn, practice was harder than any game. I mean, it just was. And from the first practice, in August when it's 98 degrees and 100% humidity and 2-a-days. I mean, they worked our butts off.
Ronny, was the football at USC? Were you prepared after playing at such a high level team at TC Williams?
Well, it's disappointing. We never won any championships at South Carolina. We didn't even sniff any. So I think the winning the state championship there at TC, like the other guys have said, practices were hard. So it was a nice cherry on top at the end of the season that all that work paid off, and we did win the state title. So that was pretty satisfying. But it did help. I mean, just playing at TC, like everybody there, certainly helped you at the next level because the talent was so good and the competition was so strong. You learn how to compete.
Well, we mentioned earlier that it was a surprise that you guys didn't win it the next year, and one of the reasons why was Coach Yost and Coach Furman had moved on. But when I interviewed Ollie Johnson, and Coach Johnson is a legendary track coach at TC, he had played for Herman Boone in North Carolina, and he came up here and joined the staff the year after the championship. And I asked him, what happened the next year? He said the competition was very tough back then. He said, and it's true, there was a 9-team district, and if you lost one game, you might not qualify for the postseason. So you could be a great team in those days and not qualify for the postseason. That was his take on it. He said, "Yeah, we were great. I think he said you lost maybe 1 or 2 games the next year, and then that was it."
We won. We lost one. I think we tied one. But I mean, our first game out of the chute was Annandale.
Wow.
Right. You know,
they were state champs that year, right?
That's right.
We beat them for districts or for regionals, right? We played Annandale for the regional championship.
Yeah, but he's talking about your senior year. They won the state championship.
They won the state the senior year.
Did they? Yeah, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I interviewed Dick Adams.
That was, you know, the scheduling was somewhat suspect. I'll just say that.
You know, we lost to Annandale first game, and then we rang off about 7 or 8 victories, and then we played Fort Hunt in a pouring down rain, the only game in Northern Virginia that was played that day, because I understand the other coach wanted to play. It slowed us down. I mean, we were playing in mud.
Yeah.
And TC's Williams Field back then, by the end of the season, was kind of a mud bath anyway. If you got 2 inches of rain, it definitely slowed things down. And you know, we had a chance. I was the holder then for Kenny Freeman, and the ball came back on a snap. This was, I guess, to tie the game, I believe. And the darn thing went right through my hands because it was like a slippery pig. And so that cost us that game, the fact that it was played in a downpour and a sludge fest. And then the next week, Coach Boone made me carry a football around the whole week at school.
That's a good story, right?
A lot of questions about that, but that's how that
That's
happened.
a typical Herman. There you go. That's Herman.
That's true to the movie for sure. Yeah.
Well, Julian, I have a question. If I could interject here for just 1 second.
Of course.
I've had people ask me a question about the Marshall game, and I have Fred Alderson here who can help answer this question. Some people have asked me and some other people in the Marshall game in the down series late in the game, where on 4th down, Frankie Glasgow breaks through the line and runs for a touchdown. Some people have asked me if Dan Carl, who was the other tackle, and Fred Alderson switched places.
We had switched. So the year before, I'd broken my left leg against I think we were playing Wakefield, and so I really didn't have as much strength in my left leg, and so Dan and I think, I'm not sure if it was the game before but you know, on Monday of that week, I just said, hey, let's switch, because I think I can get more power if I'm playing on the left side. And so for that game, I switched, trying to remember how it went. All I remember is I think I got the credit because they still thought I was playing whichever side it was that Frankie went through, the guard tackle gap. Yeah. But it was, and Dan, I think I got the notice. I think my name was mentioned in the paper, and I remember that pissed Dan Carl off, as it should have, because Dan was the one who threw the block. But I remember Herman saying that was the only time that the Marshall defense had screwed up. their linebacker, and I can't remember if they played a 4-4 or what it was, but I remember that they had that one linebacker was just in the wrong position. And there's, you talk about a guy who should have been mentioned in the movie is Frankie. Because I tell you, he's the easiest guy in the world to block for. You just had the in a fraction of a second, he was past you. I mean, he was that fast. And that's really what made the difference was, there was, the linebacker wasn't where he was supposed to be. And there was a pretty big opening, and Frankie, as fast as he was going to be through there, and nobody's going to catch him.
All right, so I'm going to say that you did switch. Next time somebody asks you that, I'm going to say you did switch.
So
yeah, it was in the practice before the week we switched like that Monday before the game, but it wasn't just for any surreptitious reason. It was just, and we didn't ask Boone or Hines or anybody. We just did it.
I just read an article on the Marshall game yesterday, where they talked to the Marshall coach after the game. And he said, we were keying in the paper. He said, we were keying. They were playing a stack, and they were keying on Frankie and Castro. They were crashing their linebackers based upon the down and distance as to who they thought was going to get the ball. And they were crashing at those guys. And Frankie said, and he said it to me multiple times, that whether he was carrying the ball or whether Henry was carrying the ball, that they were still knocking the hell out of him on every play. Yeah. And on that particular play, the linebacker was supposed to be keying on Frankie, but he keyed on Henry and stepped the wrong way. And that allowed Dan to get his butt behind him and make the shield block so that Frankie could get through the wash there at the line.
Yeah.
And did the game really end with a reverse or a flea flicker from like 70 yards out?
No. There was only a minute and some odd left in the game when Frankie scored, right?
Right.
I don't think there was a heck of a lot of time.
It was 5 minutes and 20 seconds, and it was 4th and 1.
Yeah.
Right.
We had the ball, back deep in our own end, and Ron had run the ball twice, I think, if I remember watching the tape, and Henry had run the ball once, and it was 4th and 1, and Herman was still determined that we were going to get the first down.
Wow.
Hey, Ronnie, do you remember that play? You was quarterback. Come on now.
We only ran 4 plays, so they're all pretty much the same. We used to switch. Henry and Frankie used to switch sides if we were running the dive to the left, and Henry would be over, Castro would be over to the left, and we tried to keep Frankie always as the pitchback because he was so fast.
Yeah.
So I'm sure part of that, they saw that in the film, Marshall did, and they probably thought, well, okay, we're going to the left where Castro is for that 1 yard, and they didn't think Frankie was going to run a dive. I mean, Frankie was mostly the pitch guy. I don't remember him getting a lot of dives up the middle. I remember Henry fighting through the line quite a bit and scratching for extra yards. So I don't know. That Coach Boone fooled him maybe. Put Henry on the left and did the dive to the right to Frankie. Yeah, and I agree with Fred that with the backs like Castro and Glasgow, how could that not make the movie?
Yeah.
Black, white, their names rhyme. How did that not make the movie? Their characters weren't even mentioned.
They didn't really feature running backs at all. After Petey got moved to defense, they just focused on the passing game in the movie. So they didn't really talk about the running game. Well, if you guys want, why don't we talk a little bit about Bertier? Rest in peace. It must have been obviously a devastating blow to win a state championship, and then soon after, hear about his accident. Obviously, that just must have really cast a large shadow on what should have been a really incredible moment.
Yeah, I played a lot of football with Bertier when I was at Hammond. And we were 2 linebackers at Hammond. We were pretty close friends. He stayed with me during the summer. His mom was doing something for a couple weeks in the summer before football camp, while we were doing camp and getting ready for physicals. And I'll tell you one real quick story. And yeah, it was terrible. Bertier was really a decathlete kind of guy. I mean, he was a guy that could run a sub 11 100-yard dash. He could freaking high jump. You know, he could high jump 6'6". He was the decathlete kind of guy, and he could throw the shot put. So that's the kind of athlete that he was. But one funny story: the summer before the summer we were getting ready, we were going to have physicals. He always had physicals, and there's this knucklehead named Dr. Bird that used to give us any kind of freaking pain pills and stuff we wanted when we were hurt at Hammond. And so he was going to weigh us and stuff. And back then, you always looked at the program to see how many 200-pounders they had. And Bertier and I, before we went to Burrs, we were going to get the physical together. We went down to Dunkin' Donuts. We each bought a gallon of milk and a dozen Dunkin' Donuts so that we could eat Dunkin' Donuts and drink a gallon of milk to try to get us over 200 pounds for the program. So, but Bertier was a stud athlete, good guy, and he would have probably done pretty well at D1 if he played D1.
Yeah.
He most competitive guy I think I've ever known. I mean, even after he got hurt, right? You know, if you were going to go, he'd be in his wheelchair and play racquetball with guys. I remember Nichols talking about how he used to kick his ass at racquetball. I mean, really, he went on to win bunch of stuff in Special Olympics as well, right? Or wheelchair Olympics.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, he was Kirk's right. He was a freak. He really was just a heck of an athlete.
Yeah. Very, very sad. Well, you know, Bob sent me the list of folks that had passed, and I was astounded by how long the list was. I mean, you guys probably all you around 70. So, you know, it is, you know, you guys have lived a long life, but I was really surprised by how many of the 71 Titans have passed. It was a very long list. Had that occurred to you guys when, you know, over the years?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been to quite a number of funerals, and for all of the team members that show up, it's a poignant moment when we see another one of our teammates head to the gridiron in the sky.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Anyone else want to comment on that? Or? Well, I wanted to mention the movie. So it's probably around 1999 or so. You guys are first hearing that there's a movie being made of that season. Now, if someone would ask you if there's a part of your life that they would make a movie of, would you have said the 71 football season? I mean, was it obvious that this was going to be something that would be of interest to people?
I remember when Jerry Buck called me because I'd been living overseas and then had just moved back, and I was in Arizona, and Jerry called and he says, "Hey, you're not going to believe this. They're making a movie about our football team," and it's like, why, right? And so I was completely, you know, because I was pretty divorced from it, right? I was away from Alexandria and any of that. So it came as a pretty big surprise to me.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah. Yeah, because there wasn't anywhere near as much drama as you see in the movie. You guys won pretty easily. There wasn't as much tension as in the movie. So, you know, it wasn't like you had the billboards with the racial epithets. So, yeah. So it was a surprise.
I think we were shocked to hear that. And in fact, the first time I remember hearing it was in '96. We had a reunion that a kid that actually was in the band my senior year, and then he was a junior, and then his senior year he played on the team, Walter Bowling, and he put together a reunion of sorts, and he told us then that there was going to be a movie, and quite frankly, I think we all laughed. But the big selling point for that, for me, is this. And all of us that you have here have been around the country and talked to many people, especially groups and football teams. And I think a great story that we tell them is, just remember when we were 16 or 17, we had no thoughts of anybody ever wanting to make a movie about us. So if somebody comes back to wherever you are in high school, 10 or 20 years after you've been out and want to make a movie about you in high school, what's it going to reflect about you?
Yeah.
And you can see their minds working overtime to say, "Woo, we didn't have the internet and we didn't have cell phones, and we were just 16, 17-year-old boys doing what we do best. We were chasing girls and drinking and and being crazy, and we love to play sports."
Yeah. What I love about the movie, other than the story is amazing and the acting is great, but a football game means so much. It really demonstrates how important these games are, the crowd. Back then, coaching a high school team in the city of Alexandria or anywhere in Fairfax County was incredibly prestigious to be a coach. It's not quite like that today. We have some great coaches, but the coaches, we don't have the reference, unfortunately, for coaches as it was in that day. I mean, people don't move from North Carolina to coach. It's just not. It's a different day of how we look at football. That movie really shows how important football is, just like Hoosiers was to basketball.
So I was coaching Little League when the movie came out, and it just took me and put me high up on the mountain as a Little League coach, and I was coaching the senior division. So once I got finished, my kids, they went to high school down in Chester, Virginia. So the movie, for me, it did great. It helped me move forward, open up some doors that might not have opened. So I use it as a key to talk to folks and to express and explain the stories that Disney told and where the story come from and how did it come about. And all the participants, my teammates. So for me, it's the story to be told. You can tell the truth or tell a lie. Well, nobody know but you.
And I'll say this about our coaches. As much as they may have taught us something about athletics, I think across the board, all of those coaches taught us and prepared us for life just as much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coaches do so much more than teachers, only because you spend more time with the coaches. The teachers are great as well, but the coach, if you play sports, you spend so much time with your coach. So they're going to have that effect on you.
Well, you also go through a lot more emotional highs and lows with the coach, right? I mean, that's the other part of it. And that's, and that's a great story about Yost and Dana, right? I mean, I'd never heard it, but I absolutely believe it for sure.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, I told Paul Hines when at the premiere at the Rose Bowl that I learned more. What I really learned from Paul was how to be a follower. Because like these guys, Herman would do some crap. You just like shake your head and Hines, you could just kind of see it. You could see it was, I don't want to say it was pissing Coach Hines off, but I mean, he held the party line, right? He really did. He'd support Herman, or he'd come over and talk to him, in that high pitched voice that he would get when when Paul would get kind of all amped up. But it really was true. I mean, you learn to support the boss and help the effort. And that was really, it was a great lesson for me.
Coach Hines was a great assistant coach to Coach Heinsohn in basketball. Won a state championship as an assistant coach. And I've interviewed players, and I'd forgotten he was on the bench, but apparently they loved him. They loved him on the bench as well there. Anybody
who played for Paul would have loved him. I mean, he was just that kind of guy.
Yeah.
It just was. Yeah. Just, great philosophy, could frame something that looked, totally black and dark and just, I don't know, he wasn't Pollyannish, but he was really grounded in reality. And, it's like he'd seen it before, and you can get through it.
Fred, was it important to you to have a black role model, black coach? Is that something, was that new to you back in 1971?
No, because I mean, Herman had been our offensive coach at TC. I think the year before when we played for Truck, when he was the head coach.
Yeah.
And then Herman was the assistant wrestling coach at TC. So I mean, I don't know. Being in the military and having moved around a lot, it wasn't a thing for me. I mean, I was in Alabama when they marched through from Selma to Montgomery. Right, I was in Montgomery when all that went down.
Oh.
So I kind of seen that extreme of it. So I wasn't that big a deal. Coach is a coach. You're either good or you're bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyone else want to jump in here? Or I was going to ask you, how did the movie change your life, if at all? I'm sure, Ronny, you were all of a sudden, people actually knew who you were. They'd probably forgotten about you. It's been a while since you played. But how did the movie change your guys' lives?
Well, for me, certainly brought, a lot of notoriety to that part of my life that no one in college that I played with in college, they didn't know anything about my high school or what I did in high school. It also brought back my nickname, which was dead and buried for about, 25, 30 years. I went to college looking for a new nickname. There's nothing wrong with Sunshine. I appreciate it. But I didn't tell anybody in college what my nickname was in high school. I was looking for a fresh one. So I got that. But it did, it meant something to my family because my wife really didn't know anything about that story because I really didn't talk about it that much. And my daughters as well. They call me Sunshine to this day.
Sunshine.
It's back and now it has stuck. And my friends call me Sunshine. So it was just a great honor to be at the place there where we were at that time. None of us knew what we were going through. I mean, we knew what we were going through, but we didn't know what we were going through was going to be such a big story.
Yeah. Warren or you guys, was there any disappointment that when you're not being portrayed in the movie? Because I mean, obviously you can only have so many protagonists in a movie, but was there any disappointment that people weren't portrayed?
Some people had disappointment. Me personally, no, because life goes on. And what I got from it and what I've learned from that, I went from being all district my junior year before the merger of the three high schools to nothing my senior year. It helped me learn patience. It helped me to deal with life. Yeah. Getting out here in the world and making a living for yourself and how to cope with different attitudes and certain things. It's hard to argue with success. Yeah. So how could I go to Boone and say, hey, look here, man, you're not putting enough off for me to catch the ball enough so I can at least stay to my status.
Yeah.
How you going to argue that when you go undefeated? So it taught me to have patience, to learn from different situations and how to adapt. Because I didn't initially go to TC. I wasn't from the city. I was from the country. I went to TC my freshman year of school. And before then, I was at Herndon High School. And I was in a situation where I got into a fight because segregation was starting. So my father said, okay, it's time for us to get up and move. And I went to Alexandria, who I didn't know anybody either. So it was a process of learning, just like Sunshine here. We all had that moment of being the first, and dealing with people like Sugar Babe and Bobby Luckett to be there all their life. Yeah. And they grew with organizations, YMCAs and boys clubs. So them men had a little clique within themselves.
Yeah.
So I learned life by being involved in that team.
Yeah. Well, what a great achievement to even be on such an amazing team. Bob, did the movie make you into a historian of the team, or were you already keeping up with all the players and keeping the history alive even before the movie?
Oh, I've tried to keep up with them all along. I mean, there's certain guys. I mean, I talk to Sugar Babe all the time. Barker and I have talked probably once a month at least for the last 50 years. Kerry Lundeen. So there's guys that I've kept up with, but I lived and worked in the city for a long time, so I wanted to keep it going, and we've been able to expand that now. We have about almost 70 people on an email that I send out. I am writing a book on the team, and all of these guys have been interviewed and provided great information in the book, and so hopefully the legacy keeps moving on. Hopefully the city will decide the importance of that legacy, and hopefully in a few months there will be some more positive things maybe that can be talked about with regard to the city. One day, hopefully, instead of just being on a Zoom call, guys like Fred that live in Arizona, and Ron that lives in South Carolina, and Jim that lives in North Carolina. I live in Delaware. Kirk lives in Florida. That we can all get together again, because that legacy moves on, and people are still interested in it.
Well, great. Anyone else want to chime in on how the movie affected their rest of their lives?
I think it really affected the co-eds of T.C. Williams because they met some of the gentlemen that came over from Francis C. Hammond.
And they learned how good they'd had it at TC. That's what they learned. Boy, who are those assholes from Hammond? God, they're jerks.
Actually, what they learned is that they had enough of those rich white boys out there at Hammond, and they wanted some of the real men from TC.
Right. See what you started? See what you started there?
Well, guys, I thought we'd end by letting you guys go around and just tell us what happened after that season in your life, and you can share what you want. You can share anything that you'd like, but just like to hear from each of you, and just tell us, what happened after 1971. Where'd you end up living? If you want to share info about your family or even how many kids you have, it'd be interesting. Why don't we start with Kirk Barker?
I'll tell you, I wanted to row crew and row at the boat club where during that summer, right after football, I'd signed with East Carolina. I was going to go play at East Carolina. And Fred Alderson was one of the guys who went and became a really accomplished oarsman, actually represented the United States that summer over in, I think, Milan maybe. But I went, so my mom wanted me to go to the Naval Academy. So I called East Carolina, turned down my scholarship, and went to Bullis Prep. And then a preparatory school to go to the Naval Academy. While I was there, I was going to be almost going to be a teammate of Ronny Bass because a coach who recruited me from Wake Forest, Coach Bridges, signed me, and I signed with South Carolina. So I went back and told the Naval Academy I was going to go to South Carolina. They told me don't do that, and so I ended up going to the Naval Academy, served as a naval officer, got an engineering degree there, worked in engineering companies. Fortunate enough to become a CEO of a venture capital funded engineering company that we got acquired by one of the Fortune 100s back in 2001, and then so I retired. I retired in 2013, and have been enjoying my grandkids and my wife, my family, and my kids.
Oh, that sounds amazing, Kirk. Let's go. How about Derick Hopson? What was your journey after that 71 season?
Alexandria and came to Richmond and went to Virginia Union University. San Francisco. And I'm been the owner and operator of my own wall covering business for the last 25 years.
That's great.
Football.
Yeah.
Man, busy. I'm enjoying life, you know. Do as much as I can. When I look back from where I came from to where I'm at, I'm blessed, highly faithful. Life is great for me, man. Married with kids, grandson on the way. Brother can't complain. You know, but couldn't how he want to do it. So that's my life.
Yeah.
Right, Luckett? Never gonna change, right, Luck?
Yeah.
Not as long as I've known you, buddy.
Oh, and my hands still stink from your butt.
Yeah. Well, I won't ask a follow-up on that one. How about you, Fred? Fred, I know you. Sounds like you were a star rower and you got a chance to see a little bit of the world. What's life been like for you after 1971?
I'd always wanted to go to West Point, and so while Kirk and Jerry and Dan and everybody else went to the Naval Academy, I went to West Point that didn't have a crew team, and spent 26 years in the Army. My last duty assignment was in Paris.
Wow.
And so I really kind of fell in love with international business, and then got a master's over in London, and then came back to the States, and I was with Intel for 24 years up until 1 October when I finally retired. So
wow, man, you must have an
Rank did you
amazing
reach in the
retirement.
Army?
Yeah,
just Lieutenant Colonel.
yeah,
Lieutenant
okay.
Colonel.
Great. Well, Warren, what about you? Where did you go after that 1971 season?
I'm the mystery. I'm the one that didn't go to any academy, no universities, nothing like that. But what I did is I was at TC. I was on this. I took this test for CMP Telephone Company at the time, and I did well with it. And they wanted me to come and work half a day and go to school half a day, which I did not do because I was a job. And I went to Brown University for a visit. It wasn't for me. So I called CMP and got with them. And I had them. I also was a martial arts instructor remember Junior Reed, gentlemen?
Yeah.
I was an instructor for him, and I did semi-contact pro fighting with his organization. And I also, at that time when you could work and also get some education from them sending you to school a lot. And I did a lot of that. And so I ended up with doing a lot of the implementation of the FIOS fiber for the Northern Virginia area here. And right now, I'm retired and happy.
Well, it sounds like you obviously earned that, so that's amazing.
Yeah, and I played a lot of softball too at one point down the Eastern Region coast. Some slow pitch softball with the Industrial League, a company from the phone company that we worked together. We had a pretty decent ball club. Bobby Luckett knows me when I was playing softball.
Yeah, that's right.
Ran into him in his co-ed games at Alexandria.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to Lucky then, Bob. You've done a great job keeping the history alive. What else have you been up to all these years?
I went to Bridgewater College for a year and didn't go back because I tend to play more than I did study. I went to work for the fire department, and I worked 31 years in the fire service. Retired as the chief deputy in Alexandria, and primarily did bombs and arson investigation. When I retired from there, I moved to the eastern shore of Delaware, close to Ocean City, Maryland. I did 14 years with the Ocean City, Maryland Police as a forensic investigator for the police department. And for the last 3 years, I've been working for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that Adam Walsh started, called Nick Mick, hunting for missing kids all over the country. I enjoy my retirement. I've been married to the same lady for almost 50 years.
Wow.
She was also a TC graduate, and just kicking back at the beach and enjoying putting my feet in the sand.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Bob. Well, Jim, you want to try again, Jim?
So after the 71 season in the fall of 72, I went to the University of Michigan. I was a music student, performed in the University Symphony Orchestra there for 4 years. After that, I got out and went into the computer business. I was actively involved in computers for some 40 years, actually, in one form or another. And recently retired from the computer business, but I still have a lot of friends in various computer communities, which I'm still active. So that's what I did.
That's one thing about working on computers. You don't have to go far, right? You can just do a lot of it right there in your home office, right?
Right here. Yep.
That's right. Well, let's. How about you, Ronnie? You had an excellent college career. What have you been up to all these years?
Well, after South Carolina graduated, there was no hope of making it to the next level, so I started working. Luckily, I was on the 5-year plan there. It allowed me some light hours that last semester, so I started working at a local radio station, doing sports in the morning, and then eventually parlayed that into a sales position there. And then after that, got into TV sales and did that for about 40 years. And I just graduated August 1st. So I'm still getting used to it. You guys that have been retired longer than I have, I'm still figuring out what to do with my day. Golf once or twice a week here in Myrtle Beach. There's only 105 courses to choose from. So that's not a problem. Yeah. It's harder to find people to play with than where to play. Met my wife down in South Carolina. She's a Jersey gal. We both were kind of implants to the state, but the weather's great. We both liked it, so we both hung around. And we've been married coming up on 39 years now.
Wow, that's incredible.
Two daughters and a son. And my son played high school quarterback here in North Myrtle Beach. He was actually probably going to be better than I was, but he never filled out. He was very light. He didn't get up over about 145 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, they're big. They're bigger now. It was so nice to meet you, Ron. My daughter was so excited I was going to talk to Sunshine today. So it's very nice to meet you. I want to make sure. I think I got everybody. Is that right? Okay. Well, look, guys, this has been amazing. One of my favorite movies. I always admired T.C. Williams, and as a Robinson basketball player, one of the biggest moments of my career is when we beat TC. It was a team that went to state, and we won in the Garden. I had so much respect for them, and I was friends with a lot of their players, and the football players too. And so it's just, when they memorialize you guys, it just add to the mystique of that great school. I was going to let you guys, if anyone had any final words, I don't know if you guys want to sing that "Na song from the movie, but if anyone had any final words they wanted to say, now's the time.
I have a question.
Did you play basketball at UVA?
I was on a JV team. I did. Yep.
What year was that?
I was there. I was 86, 87, and 87, 88. So I was an 88 graduate.
I got a question for Bob before we go. Do you have all your Santa gigs lined up for this Christmas?
I've got a few, brother. You need one down there. If you need one down there in South Carolina, I got you.
Santa doesn't
what they say.
I know you don't need any padding, that's for sure.
Exactly.
I never did, Fred.
Good.
Bob, did you ask me a question about UVA that I missed?
No, I said, was Mike Henson the basketball coach at TC when you were playing?
Absolutely. I played against a Hall of Fame T.C. Williams Garden and Glenn Williams. Glenn was
Oh yeah,
he was a GW guy,
right.
and then their best player was a guy named Tyrone Shaw, who had an amazing career at West Virginia University.
At West Virginia,
One of the
right.
most underrated players. I did a poll on our social media, the best post player in the history of Northern Virginia, and Tyrone Shaw won that poll. So that was the guys I competed, and they were great guys. We would compete ferociously on the court, but after the game, they were such good guys. All of them were. So, but anyway, guys, look again. This has been great. This is an honor to talk to you guys. Thanks for taking so much time. And I look forward to producing this thing. I think it's going to be great to fill in all the gaps of the story. And when Bob finishes his book, if he wants, he can come back on and we can talk more about it. If it helps you sell a couple of copies. So
I'll just say this before I go, and this is for everybody. If you guys have any interest in the history of football in Virginia, Rich Avila gave me a website that they use as coaches. It's called fourseasonsfootball.com. Fourseasonsfootball.com. And you can go back and look at every high school in Virginia all the way back to the 30s and 40s, to include Hammond, to include GW, and certainly T.C. Williams, and find all the statistical data for just about every game that they played. But it covers Virginia, Maryland, D.C., West Virginia, Tennessee. So if you're interested in, and you can get some good history of football from that website.
Why don't you shoot it on email, Bob? That you
Okay,
sent out.
I'll put it on our email. I'll do that.
Yeah, that'd be a good place to put it.
yeah.
Okay.
So
And-
guys, we'll
and
sign
Julie,
off
just-
now. I'm sorry.
Just so you know, before you go, I just posted about 4 days ago all the statistics from that season for our defense, and the amount of banter that it's caused between all of the players has been fantastic. You know, the defensive players all saying how much they carried the offense, and if it wasn't for the defense, the offense would have looked so terrible because they smothered all these teams so bad defensively, and they gave us the ball that we didn't have much to do on offense. Well, the thing about it is the offensive statistics are coming, and when they get those, it's really going to cause some trash talk.
There would have been nobody at the stadium if it weren't for the offense, because offense sells tickets.
That's right.
Defense wins championships.
I'll stick up for the defense because they did. Those first 3 games were probably, pretty important that the defense was as stout as it was while we got to learn the system, because that was a new system for all of us. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And then we had to carry them. Their bus breaks down, and we had to push their bus off the road, then put them on our bus and carry them the rest of the way.
Luckett. Oh,
Well, guys, I'm going to sign off the recording, but you're welcome to stay on and catch up as much as you want. But I do want to thank you again, guys. It's been great meeting you guys. Hopefully, we'll keep in touch.
Where are you?
All right. Thank you,
Nice meeting
Julian.
you,
We appreciate it, my man.
Guys.